Welcome to the Swinging Lights. If you missed last week's episode, you missed a good one. It was with Tom Bennett. Tom Bennett is a country blues artist. He's currently stationed out of St. George, Utah, but he travels all over the damn place. He plays over 330 shows a year. He performed a couple of tracks in TaWanda, the Volkswagen bus I do this podcast out of. Great tracks. He's a top-notch human being. His music's phenomenal. You need to follow him. Check him out. Follow him on Instagram. He's got a website. I think it's Tom Bennett One Man Band, but I could be mistaken on that. I did put all the links up on our website. So if you go to theswinginglights.com, click on podcasts, all the episodes are there. All the links are there. Today's guest is Thomas Sienko. Thomas is an accomplished drummer and musician who earned a degree in jazz performance from the University of Utah. He currently performs in two bands that frequent the Park City circuit, Rage Against the Supremes and Los Hellcaminos. Tom also teaches private drum lessons, and him and his lady friend are Ford Mustang fanatics. Enjoy. I'm here with Thomas Sienko. That's how you pronounce it, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Sienko.
Sienko. And damn, I'll have to say, dude, I'm really impressed with how far you've come from when we first met.
Oh, thank you. That's a long time. That's a long time ago, and yeah, there's a lot of years of growth to explore.
Yeah. So I
time.
want to kind of get into that because that's
Sure.
the thing that I'm probably the most curious about. Because like you and I met at Westminster College in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we both had joined this jazz combo class, and it was what do you call those? An elective class to fill an arts credit, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but when I showed up to the office when I was registering, I was like, I don't know how to read music. I've been playing bass by ear for years. I'm not amazing by any means. Is this class okay for me? And like, oh yeah, man. It's for beginners. They'll go into all that shit and stuff. So I'm like, cool, man. I'm signing up for this. Like, I want to kind of get my feet wet in the jazz world. And I showed up, and they just started handing out sheet music, man. And I sat in the back, and I was like, fuck. So I like went up to the teacher afterwards. I was like, dude, I think I signed up for the wrong class. I got to get out of here. And he was really cool. And he's like, no, man. Just sit in, listen, try to pick up as much as you can. Like, don't toss the class away. So what was your experience when you signed up? Because
I had a similar experience. I was about a year into drumming. I must have been 19. I started drums at 18. You know, I just kind of bought a kit when I was in high school and just kind of started, you know, learning however I could on my own. And, you know, a year goes by and I'm deciding to pursue some music classes at college where I met you. And yeah, I got into that jazz combo, I think maybe my second semester. And I'm like, what's this all about? And, you know, I went in there and I was terrified.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've taken like 3 private lessons and I'm barely learning how to go just playing dang-a-lang, dang-a-lang.
Right.
And they're like, all you got to do is count measures. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And so I
never watched Sesame Street as a kid.
Yeah. And so it was terrifying. And so I spent the first like semester or 2 in that class being like, hey, I'm just going to go sneak over to the practice room and work on my chops, which was kind of a cop-out for me,
right?
You know, because like I felt like I was doing something, but it's like I could have just practiced after class. So why was I using class time to, you know, work on my double stroke rolls or whatever? But yeah, I was just terrified of that class. And like whenever I was sitting behind the drums, I was sweating bullets.
Oh yeah.
Because I didn't know, like I just look at the sheet music and it made 0 sense to me.
So were you making it up, like pretending like you could read?
I'd be lost after about 2 measures, like, no joke. And then like, what would happen? I would blow arrangements, and you know, my eyes were glued to the music, and meanwhile, you know, the director's cueing stuff, and you know, I'm over here pretending I'm reading, and it was just a throw you into the fire experience, and it's like, this is hard.
Yeah.
This is really hard. And there were some students in there who were killing it, who I work with in this day, and I was like, dude, do you remember me in that jazz combo? Like, I know you were killing it. And he's like, I remember you in that jazz combo. I was terrified of that. Yeah. It's crazy. Like, you were there. I don't know if you remember Matt Wenegren. He was the guitar player.
Yes, yeah. He played in Shades of Grey at the time. Yes,
so I work with him
exactly
full time now.
Do you really?
And yeah.
He was a phenomenal guitar player then. I can't even imagine how good he is now.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. Like, the dude gets down.
Yeah.
Just plays from the heart and
he's got style in
like
spades,
no other.
Man.
Like, when you get him in a blues band, that's a good time.
Hell yeah.
But
is he still playing that SG?
He does have that. He's got I don't know my guitar gear that well, but he's like, his sound is just one of the like tops.
And that drummer that was in the class was phenomenal too.
There was a couple. There was a I remember the kid with the blonde hair. He was really good. And then just everyone else, like, they knew how to sit down and just serve the band. Like, whether they had chops out the ass or not, like, they knew how to sit down and read the chart and just, you know, get the band through it.
Yep.
You know, they may have not gone on and had music careers, but...
Right. Do you remember part of the graduating that class was we had to do that live performance in front of the auditorium?
I do recall that.
I had gravy leg that night, man. I was so fucking nervous.
Yeah.
Because, like, the thing is for me is he's like, I want you to play the bass on this part and take like a solo on this part. Like, just do your best. Like, that's what he wanted me to do. And so I never learned how to read music in that class, man. I just memorized that shit.
Yeah.
We got up on stage, I was sweating bullets, got through it, all memorized, pretending like I was looking at the chart.
Yeah.
Wasn't looking at, I could not read charts, man.
Yeah.
And he came up to me afterwards. He's like, I think out of anybody in the class, you were one of the ones that progressed the most this year.
Awesome. Yeah.
I was like, little do you know, dude, I can't fucking read music for shit.
Yeah, like, I just found my way to fake it.
Yeah. Sorry about those moths we have. Those
right?
up at the cabin all over the damn place.
I'm not afraid of bugs anymore.
So then after that, you took off and went to the University of Utah and got a music degree. So tell me a little bit about that.
And man, again, I was terrified because I borderline flunked all my music theory classes that I tried to take in Westminster. I'm like, this stuff is tough, man. Like, I took a piano class and barely passed it. So I'm like, and I talked to my instructor, Kelly Wallace, at the time. I'm like, hey, man, like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like, I kind of like the drums.
Yeah.
You know, it's something I've stuck with for 2 years now. I'm like, should I go get a music degree? Or should I get a psychology degree? And I don't know, you know?
Right.
Like, the whole, I don't know, factor about it is like, you got to listen to that. Like, you're going to spend a lot of money on a psychology degree, and if you don't end up using it, like, you're going to feel bad. Like, the conversation we had this morning where, you know, college debt.
Yep.
But he's like, hey, man, like, I will write you a letter of recommendation, because I guess he saw the work ethic that I had.
Right.
Like, at the time I was like, I don't know if I can hang with those guys. I'm like, I barely survived the, you know, the crash course at Westminster, the few classes I took there. I'm like, but damn it, I'm gonna try.
Right.
I said. And so he's like, you know, I got in like that because, you know, my instructor, his letter of recommendation goes a long way because he's top dog.
Isn't he the guy that owns Backbeats?
Yeah, it's Kelly Wallace. You remember?
He's a phenomenal drummer.
You've seen him once or twice, right?
Yep.
You're like, damn.
Yep. Yeah, he's out of this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he wrote me a letter of recommendation, and I got in. And, you know, my first semester, boom, you know, you had like your classical music theory class, you had a jazz improvisation theory class, and, you know, you're playing in jazz combos, and you're also taking like 2 generals, and you're expected to practice, or at least I expected to practice at least 2 hours a day,
right.
Which ended up taking over my life. But and so you're like thrown into this fire, and I'm like, I can do this. And, you know, I surrounded myself with some colleagues that would help me, and I talked to my teachers. Musicianship class, a class where you had to listen to things and write them down or sing them back. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? I'm gonna drown in this class, because that is so far, that's the complete opposite of what I do here. This is all rhythm. Like, I can do the rhythm stuff, you know, I can read rhythm, not very well, but at least I have that in that class.
Right.
But it's like they asked me to sing, and I'm like, do, re, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Nope. Try again. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? And so I had to work really hard.
Yeah, man.
And balance, you know, getting my theory grounded, and then also keeping up with this instrument, because this instrument's what's going to make me my money.
Right.
Because it's what I'm supposedly good at. So, man, it was just challenging, but I kind of broke through the, you know, I just made it work, which was really inspiring. And I had, like, one of the best times of my life. I remember my first, like, 2 semesters at the U. I was like, this is good. This is what I'm going to do. And, you know, I looked up to some of my colleagues who were, like, you know, a grade or 2 above me, and they're like, oh, yeah, we're playing gigs at bars. We're getting paid $100 for it, a man. And I'm like,
sign me up.
I'm like, you're getting $100 to play the drums at a club? I'm like, are you kidding? How can I get that gig?
Yeah.
And so I was just really inspired. And, you know, those that were better than me, I'm like, well, how come they're so good? I'm like, that sucks.
Yeah.
And I've always been very kind of like self-defeating. You know, I was like, well, I'll never be as good as them. I may as well give up.
Right.
But for the first time in my life, I was like, let's ask them why they're so good.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, you know, Jason. I'm like, why do you kill it so bad, man? Like, what do you do? He's like, oh, I practice 5 hours a day. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of time to practice. And then I'm like, what if I practice 5 hours a day?
Yeah.
Then I'd get better.
Yep.
And so, days later, weeks later, I found a way to build in a 5 hour, I started at 2 hours and then 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours.
Like straight, or would you break it up in chunks throughout the day?
I would break it up during the day. We can go into that in a sec about like practice things, but yeah, I guess you could just say I was inspired by the colleagues that were better than me, and I'm like, well, how do I get on their level?
Yeah.
And it's just putting in the time, and so I found a way to get through my theory classes quicker, get through my homework quicker, use the most of your time, because you only have 24 hours and you have to sleep for at least 5,
right,
and eat for at least 1.
Right.
And I was literally like balancing minutes in my day.
Wow.
Like I got to the point where I'm like, okay, 5 hours of practice isn't enough. Let's do 6 hours. This was during fall and spring semesters, so I've got a class load on top of that, plus like an hour and a half commute. So I'm like, how can I make this work? And I'd get myself up in the morning by taking an 8 a.m. class. So I made sure I was up at 6:30 a.m. every day, commute to school, take my 8 a.m. class, and then I'd have a 2-hour break. Boom. There's 2 hours of practice from, like 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Then I have another class at 1. So then I take a lunch break. Pretty soon I wasn't taking that lunch break. I brought a sandwich and I was eating it while I was practicing. That gave me an extra hour.
Damn.
And my friends would knock on the door like, hey, come take lunch with us. And I'm like, can't. I'm practicing. Sorry, I suck and I need the practice,
Right.
I got to catch up to all y'all.
Right.
So I would I wasn't very social in college, I guess, because I didn't take lunch breaks.
Right.
Because it was like, that's just another hour. And that hour adds up to 5 hours in the week.
Right.
So that's a lot of time.
Right.
And then in a month, you got 20 extra hours of practice just by eating a sandwich while you do exercises.
Right.
And then, I would do things like sometimes when I'm working on just hand chops and I'm doing this for an hour, eventually you can zone out and your muscle memory kind of takes over.
Yeah.
Like you have to be careful with that because you don't want to accidentally practice something that's not quite there. But I would study for like my music history tests. I'd have them out in front of me and I'd be going, all right, Beethoven, this and that. Cool. So I'd like double up on that if I felt that it could work. And sometimes it did, which was efficiency,
I don't know how people do that shit, man. I must be too stupid. My wife does that shit, man.
Oh, man.
She knits, and she's a wizard knitter.
Uh-huh.
But she'll be watching podcasts of people knitting and talking about knitting and all. So she's like absorbing all that information while she's sitting on the couch knitting.
That's cool.
I'm like,
yeah.
I don't think I could play bass and be like reading about bass and like.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do that at the same time.
Maybe you could sit there
maybe an
and
exercise,
work on a scale,
right.
a really monotonous scale to get your coordination down, and you can be watching The Office or whatever.
That's
if
a
you
good
watch
idea,
The
man.
Office, if you don't, you need to.
Because that's my biggest problem, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you talking about this, because
Uh-huh.
one of the things I have a tough time with is trying to fit the time in, because I have like a 40-hour work plus work week, got a wife, got a kid, but I also got a band that depends on me and stuff, so I'm always just like trying to squeeze in time, and sometimes I miss it, and I always feel like shit. Like my wife was always like, you're in a much better mood when you practice every day.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's hard to get it in with all the other fucking responsibilities in life, man. But sitting on the couch with the wife at the end of the day, just running through just get my chops. I
Yeah.
don't think about it too much. That could fit in an extra hour a day.
Yeah.
So.
And not to look on the past, but one of my instructors, Randy Herbert, who I took some lessons with a little bit more sparsely, he's like, what are you doing in life? I'm like, I'm 20-something, I'm young. And he's like, how much time do you have to practice? He's like, what are you doing this summer? He's like, do you have a job? And I'm like, I don't have a job. He's like, well, consider using that time to practice because, consider my situation. He was 33 at the time, so my age now. He's like, at some point, you might have like, a family, a kid, a job that demands you, or even if you're working, even if music is your job, you get less time to practice your own stuff because you're always out there playing and doing rehearsals and teaching. So it's like when you have like a full summer and you're doing nothing, like, can you fill up that entire day with practice? And that's what I did for a couple of summers when I was not in school. I would practice 9 hours a day. I'd wake up at 7, take the train to the university, grab 2 meals, make 2 meals at home, grab a sandwich and then a snack. And then I'd spend the entire day at the university from, 9 a.m. till 8 or whatever, 8 or 9 hours. I got up to 8 or 9 hours in a day working on drums, which it blows my mind because lately I'm like, how did I do that? Like, that was a different time. Like, I must have been so motivated.
Right.
Because, like, right now, like, I take breaks from practicing, not for like a day, not for like a week, but for years. I've taken years off.
And you just hop right back on it and can just get right at it? Or do you find that you have to, like, strengthen up again?
The curious thing, I do feel like I can kind of hop back on it. In fact, like, I feel better. I had a health issue come up a couple months ago. Let's call it a near-death experience. And when I woke up from that, I was a completely different person. Like,
what happened? Can you talk about what happened? I mean, I don't want to get too personal. But I'll give you the condensed version, because if we want to go into this is a whole nother, like, this could be a 6-hour topic. Okay, yeah.
But, so I'll give you a condensed version because I think it relates to, like, my outlook on life and especially how I approach things as an artist now. But about a year ago, I was put on some anti-anxiety, antidepressant medication, and about 2 months ago, what I believe started happening is my body developed a tolerance to it, and I was on an SSRI.
Well, this can be dangerous if you mix them with different things,
and
correct?
Then, yeah, the SSRIs, I believe they started to stop. They ceased working as effectively as they could, so my health started to go kind of back to where it was. It was imbalanced. I had imbalanced moods, and so I kind of felt like I was slipping a little bit. Like, I was like, why do I feel so blah lately? And then all of a sudden, boom, like, it got drastic. Like, out of nowhere, my moods got crazy wild. Like, I had super deep depressions and crazy manic moods where I became violent.
Yeah.
And it got bad. Like, I tried to, call my doctor, like, hey, this is going on. Can I see you for, my anti-anxiety meds? And they're like, yeah, this doctor's booked out 3 weeks from now. And I'm like, okay, well, let's book the appointment. I might need him sooner than that, but whatever, I'll hang on. And, like, before that appointment came, like, I would have died because things got bad. Like, my health slipped, and I was feeling things that I wasn't used to, like manic moods up here that I didn't experience before ever, and depression that was so deep that I didn't experience. And as I was going through these things, I didn't know how to handle them. So, I hit them with different substances. I mixed a dangerous, I'd have like a drink or two, and I'd smoke, thinking that it would calm me down, whereas what I believe it was exasperating the issues. So I was just, all of a sudden, I found myself in a very dangerous cocktail of drugs,
Yeah.
And so pretty soon I surrendered. I guess you could say, like, the SSRI withdrawal kind of put me, like, I wasn't suicidal, but I was getting to the point where I had suicidal intentions. I mean, it could have been minutes away where I would do something to hurt myself or to hurt somebody. And so I'm like, okay, this is too much. And at some point I was with my girlfriend, and I'm like, I was in the middle of my worst panic attack, and I was like, I can't wait till Tuesday. It was like 4 days away from that appointment.
Yeah.
And I was like, take me in, drop me off at the ER. I can't handle it.
Jesus.
And so then they checked me into an inpatient facility.
Yeah.
for 5 days, which was a wonderful experience. Can't be more grateful for that experience.
Yeah.
So what I learned there is, you know, my situation was pretty simple compared to the other people that were there around me. I was pretty lucky that, you know, all I had going on was an SSRI withdrawal.
Right.
So they rebalanced my meds, and, you know, I talked to therapists and psychiatrists and doctors and nurses, wonderful staff that took care of me, and my meds got rebalanced, so, you know, my brain is healthier. And then I also learned a bunch of coping skills, and I think the biggest takeaway from it was, like, I could have died.
Sure.
Like, at some point, I woke up, I snapped out of a manic episode on the freeway going 100 miles an hour.
Holy shit.
With my girlfriend behind me, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, okay, let off that throttle. Now, I build race cars on the side, so my cars are very dangerous in the wrong mood or in the wrong hands. So I'm like, holy shit. Like, what if I had not snapped out of that mood at 100 miles an hour? What if I snapped out of it at 160 when I'm revving out my, you know, motor all the way? It's like, well, at that point, you're either going to go to prison, they're going to take your car away. And, like, at that point, there's big consequences.
Sure.
But it's like, what if I needed more than that?
Right.
Like, how easy is it to take this vehicle you're in and turn it into a suicide rocket?
Right.
Like, who's to say, like, how far away am I from A, going 160, B, this 160 isn't enough to get out this rage, and so I, you know, flip my car and create the most violent wreck Salt Lake's ever seen.
Right.
And if I'm lucky, I'll wake up dead. If I'm unlucky, I'll wake up paralyzed and a vegetable. So, like, that would have been just really
devastating.
Stupid. But it's like, yeah, so that's the health thing I went through in the last...
Well, I work in healthcare, and it's a tough one, man, because it's not like you can just draw up some brain serum and be like, oh, you're this much deficit in this, and this is exactly what's not working. Like, you can do that with blood labs. Mm-hmm. You drop somebody's blood and see where they're vitamin deficient, you know, all those things, but you can't do that with brain chemicals.
Yeah. So
you put people on these medications, but you don't follow them super tight because, I mean, there's just so much mental health need. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think I think it's a bad thing that we have so much mental health issues, but it's also a product of, I think, our environments in a lot of ways. The shit we eat, just the stress that's all around us all the time. Like, people are just ticking time bombs, and so they go get put on meds to try to, like, help them out. When, you know, sometimes yoga, meditation, you know, learning coping mechanisms can help a lot. You don't have to, like, always fix everything with drugs. But in our culture over here, it's just take this pill, take this pill. Yeah. I mean, I work with patients all the time, and you look at how many pills they're on. It's crazy. They're taking a pill to counteract the effects that this other pill causes, the side effects. But this pill's meant to cure this, but there's side effects. So take this pill. So it's just a laundry list of pharmaceutical shit, man, and that's dangerous. I mean, I've had 2 family members that got on antidepressants. One of them committed suicide. The other one tried 3 times. And the other one, you know, went through a divorce. I'm not going to say names or tell you how they're related to me because I want to keep their confidentiality, but they're really close people to me that I love very dearly. And that one, you know, was going through a divorce, super depressed. They went in, put her on, I can't remember the name of the medication. It was an antidepressant, and never had been suicidal before. Wasn't suicidal when they went in seeking for the medications. Yeah. But just lost their fucking mind.
Mm-hmm. Like right when they started the meds? Or...
It was like probably maybe a couple of weeks to 3 weeks in, or maybe even a month. Yeah. But people just assumed like she was just, was just being reckless and everything. But 3 attempts, ended up in the ICU, had sepsis. It was a train wreck situation, and then they took him off that medication and have been fine ever since.
Yeah. It's,
But got in a lot of trouble during that time. Like you talked about making a mistake, this person got in a lot of trouble, ended up on probation during this like 3-month window of chaos. Mm-hmm. Never been chaotic like that in the past. 3 months of chaos and like 2 to 3 years of probation, fines, got the license taken away, and it's taken that long to get it all back, and it was all related to this fucking medication, and they had proof and document, but it doesn't matter. So even though you were having a psychotic situation, if you had done something bad, man, you'd be just like you said, hosed. So it's sad, man. It's sad.
Yeah,
that,
it is sad.
There's so much of that going on.
I think just really quickly to touch on that, I think with any substance, whether it's your pharmaceuticals or your weed or your booze, just everything in moderation, and especially the SSRIs. Like I've learned now, you know, like when I first got them, they're like, oh, if you have thoughts of suicide, and I'm like,
by the time you're there, you're not thinking rationally.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh, I better call my doctor. I'm having suicidal thoughts. You're way past that.
Yeah.
You're not thinking logical
anymore. It can turn
anymore.
on you so fast,
Yeah,
and mine turned
absolutely.
on me so fast, where all of a sudden I lost control.
Yeah.
And you know, I was ready to turn my hands against me. Not quite there, but it could have been minutes away. It could have been days away. I don't care to find out.
Yeah.
I don't want to get that close to the Grim Reaper. You know?
Ever.
No, that was close enough for me. But if we could adjourn forward, the takeaway I got from this, besides getting my medication rebalanced, and I mean, I learned so much from that. But I think the whole perspective thing really went in and stuck. Perspective being like, I have a really cool life, and I have a great support system out here, and I do art for a living, and that's extremely rare. Like, and I've got a soulmate that does the same. You know, she struggles with mental health, but she does art for a living, and so together, you know, we met up, and it's like we have so much to give to the world in terms of, you know, music and art. And, that like it's so special. And it's like I can't believe that, you know, I could have possibly left this like that. Like, what would people think? They'd be like, you know, the people who don't understand suicide and that stuff. It's like I didn't want to kill myself, but I just felt...
people assume that it's drugs, and that dude was a drug addict. That's why he took his life.
Yeah.
And what a lot of times they don't understand is they were trying to medicate to fix what was naturally happening. So there's an underlying condition, right? That's why they were medicating with things. So I never look at it like, oh, that person was just a piece of shit. It's like, man, something happened in their life that brought them to that point. And I don't think I was as empathetic towards it, but when I went through a divorce, I had months of like being on that ledge, man. And it's a scary place to be, dude. And yeah, in hindsight, you look back, it's like, fuck, dude, I'd have been gone. I wouldn't have been in my kid's life. And that would have done damage to her big time. Everybody around you would suffer from something like that. Like, in hindsight, you can come to that realization. But in the moment, I mean, there's just little things that would pop me out of it, because I was like living in a basement apartment. I lost my house. I lost control of legal control of my kid. I mean, there was a lot of reasons to be super depressed, man. And I just remember there were times where I was just thinking those dark thoughts of how you would do it, and life would be better, and if I'm not going to have control over my child in some way, shape, or form, like, I'm done. And then it would just be like my little dog sitting on my lap, and I was like, I can't leave Harley. It's like, like that would be the thing that would just like pop into your head, and like, oh, dude, I got to stop thinking that way, man. But that's the only time that I mean on that level, and it's not a good place to be, man. It's bad. So, but coming through it.
You know, I kind of had this perspective hammered into me that, like, you know, life is really great, and so now, like, when I sit down to play a gig, you know, I've been out for 3 weeks or so now, just kind of readjusting to the world, and you know, I started.
So this just happened recently.
Yeah. So I left the inpatient program 4 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Man.
And you know, I played a gig like 3 days after. Ironically, it was the Salt Lake City Recovery Days gig, and I'm like, it's a volunteer gig too. So, you know, my boss is like, hey, can you play this gig with me? It's Salt Lake Recovery Days. And, you know, a year ago when we did this gig, I was like, oh, I have to wake up at the ass crack of dawn. I'm not making any money, and I'm not sober. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, this is a stupid gig, and I have to be there, and it's annoying. You know, it's one of those sucky gigs.
Right.
But he asked me again this year, and, you know, it was right after my dismissal, and I'm like, he's like, hey, you ready for Saturday? And I'm like, what's Saturday? He's like, the Recovery Days gig. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'm ready.
Right.
Because I just left a, you know, what you could call it a rehab.
Right.
And, you know, I'm doing like a month of sobriety to clear my head from, you know, like alcohol and weed and stuff. Just to make sure my pharmaceuticals are, to understand them and how they're working with me. To
right.
You got to be in tune with that.
Absolutely.
Once they turn on you, you got to know how to handle it. And
right.
I do now. I have a lot better skills.
Good.
If I go downhill again, like, I won't end up in the ER. I have resources.
Right.
That I can take care of myself and fix it. But sorry, I'm losing my train of thought just a little bit. So I'm leaving. Oh yeah, I played that gig and it was just freaking magical.
Awesome.
Like, the gig honestly was a little bit of a disaster. It was an event.
Yeah.
And if you've worked an event, you know that they never go smoothly.
No.
In fact, the
changeovers are too fast. You never get a good sound check.
Like, no one knows what they're doing.
Right.
There's no security. I mean, we had bands getting like ripped off stage because they got too political and it was the wrong place, wrong time, and that we didn't have monitors for 2 hours, so our singers were struggling. And I was just sitting there like, I brought like a tiny kit like this, and I took a picture of it and put it to my Facebook because we live on the internet, and I'm like, do less or do more with less.
Right.
And that was the whole idea of the day. And it was like, well, I'm just gonna bring, you know, kick, snare, hi-hat, and ride, which is the least amount of drums I've ever brought to a gig. And I'm like, this is a lot more than I had in rehab. Like,
right.
I could have not even seen this day. So it's a blessing to be here with these few drums, and I'm just gonna groove for my musicians, and we're just gonna play music, and it's gonna be awesome. And I just was feeling every note of it. I was like, oh yeah, it's good to be out. What a nice day. Like, look at
just like really living in the moment.
Really living in the moment. Yeah, in my previous life, you know, I dealt with a lot of anxiety. I didn't even know it.
Right.
Like, I thought I had depression, but I think, I don't know, a lot of what I struggle with is anxiety, and especially, and it translated so heavily to whenever I would play the drums. It's funny, I explained this to my best friend, and he's like, what? Really? And I'm like, when I sat down and played the drums, I'd always be thinking, oh, I gotta do a really cool fill here for this transition. And I was thinking ahead. Like, I wasn't living in that moment.
Right.
I was thinking, okay, what kind of fill am I gonna do here? What if I do this chop? What if I do this chop? What if we break up triplets and move them down the kit? Yeah, that'll sound cool. And then I'd go for it, and I'd blow it every time.
Right.
Like, whether you could tell or not, like, I blew it because, like, oh, I messed up a little bit. It didn't go the way as planned. It didn't go the way that I practiced it for 8 hours the other day in the practice room. It's like, I blew it.
Right.
And all of a sudden, like, after rehab, I'm calling it rehab, after that, I learned how to meditate a lot better, how to live in the moment a lot better.
Right.
And again, a lot of this could also be the pharmaceuticals that I'm on. They lift all the anxiety off my shoulders, so I'm just like, all the time.
Right.
And when I sit behind a kit, I'm not thinking like, and this is the biggest growth I've had. I've learned how to more deeply live in the moment, play in the moment. So, like, I'm no longer thinking about what fill am I gonna do at the end of these 4 measures. It's like, that moment's not here yet. Like, what's happening now? And so now I'm sitting and I'm grooving, and when I'm grooving during, you know, I'm thinking about, okay, how loud, how balanced are my drums? How in the pocket is my groove? Where is he playing? Where is he playing? Where is she playing? What do I do to take that and blend it together and create a groove that you can fall deep into? So I've been closing my eyes a lot more and opening my ears because that helps me listen better. Because I don't get distracted by, you know, people partying or, you know, whatever. And I'm just listening and I'm adjusting, you know, I'm pushing or falling back a little bit and just listening and trying to blend with my musicians. So, like, that attitude alone is like, wow, like I have a deeper, I just feel like a better servant to my bandmates.
Yeah.
And then as far as the fill stuff, I no longer, I try and get out of that mentality of like, what kind of chop should I play next? Should I play a 6-stroke roll? Should I do a linear fill?
Right.
It's like, no, I just kind of let it happen. And part of that is, as I'm opening my ears, a lot of the musicians I work with are very conversational because they have roots in jazz.
Right.
And so they'll throw something at me, and I'll be like, oh yeah. And the fill
So
is
you guys
created,
are having a conversation.
the fill is created based on what they said, not what I think was going to make me feel cool.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
It's like, I'm going to play, oh yeah, instead of something dope, like a dope chop that's going to be like, oh, that drummer's good. It's like, no, that's
Right.
kind of missing the point. It's like, this isn't the me show. It's
Right.
the us. So how can I serve? How can I respond to his solo? And all of a sudden, like, boom, that phrasing, just that fill just happens. And it's, and I'm not thinking what chop. And that's the other thing. You know, I took a few lessons in 3 years ago. I took a few lessons with Jay Lawrence. I had the opportunity to work with Jay. And I'm like, hey, Jay, I want to work on my soloing. You know, in college, all I studied was how to serve.
Right.
So now I want to play for me a little bit. I want to be able to sit down behind a kit and, like, you know, maybe compete in a competition and feel good about, like, just blowing chops or whatever.
Right.
And so he taught me how to explore rudiments at the very late age of, you know, post-college music degree. And so I would just sit there and practice, you know, my 6-stroke roll and my 5-stroke roll. And I studied, like, I got through like 4 rudiments, and I just explored every possible thing I could do with them. I took a lot of time doing that. But then when I'd play my gigs, like, those things, I would never use those things.
Right.
And it's like, well, why? I think a lot of it was the anxiety. It's like, oh, you're not ready to use that lick.
Right.
And also, like, don't be thinking like, okay, here's an opportunity for a 5-stroke roll, maybe at the end of this measure, because this song is funky and you can play it at 16th notes and that'll be really dope. And then you go for it and you're like, shoot, what's the sticking? And all of a sudden you're like, you're in here.
Yeah.
Instead of, and then you've blown the one.
Yeah.
You lost the one and your boss gives you a crusty. It's like,
yeah, we don't do that here.
we don't do that. We need to keep the people dancing. Like, there's no room for error. It's like, you just keep that going.
Yeah.
You don't want to miss that up. But now it's like these chops all of a sudden, like when I sit down at the kit now, I don't think about the chops that I learned in the last 2 years. I just listen to the music, and if the music is like, oh, hey, we're requiring tension right here, my brain goes, okay, tension, play something tense, or just start something.
Yeah.
And my hands kind of take over because they know the chop, and they just kind of do it.
Right.
And it's, I guess that's kind of the best way I can explain it for now.
Well, I think you hit on some really important things. Number one, that is what anxiety is.
Yeah.
You're either focused on the past or you're focused on the future, and that causes anxiety big time. And then just the ability to listen and conversate in a situation. That's what I like the most about the podcasting thing. I've done a bunch of podcast episodes with just some of my friends that aren't necessarily musicians. But this is more focused on my musical friends and acquaintances and people I know. That's what I like about this. But to be able to have these conversations where we're listening and talking, people, it's harder and harder to do that because you're always on your fucking cell phone. So, like, I find that this is a way for me to have, like, meaningful conversations with people because everybody's got their shit put away.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation, get to know people. Like, these are things, because we hung out in the past. You know, we were in a band together, Dirty Copper. Yeah. We used to spend some time together. I always kind of talk trash on my earlier bands, but that was the first time that a band was actually starting to sound like a real band. You know, it was with Dirty Copper. We were starting to, you know, and then things have just progressed from there. A lot of good friends in that band. But to be able to conversate back and forth in a musical situation makes the best music. But anytime you have somebody that's always overriding, always talking about themselves all the time, never listen. Those aren't fun people to be around. Are they? If we were hanging out and all I ever did was just talk about Justin all the time, that'd be annoying.
I don't get quite as much out of that as a two-way conversation.
Yeah. And same thing goes with music. If you're in a band with somebody that's all about themselves and just wants to be the loudest one, always the one talking and just the only person getting the attention, not spreading the love around and communicating with the rest of the band, all bets are off. So, I mean, I think you made some great analogies and some good points there, man. I know that's when I mess up as a musician, is when I'm thinking about the crowd. When I'm looking out into the crowd instead of just staying focused in the moment while I'm playing. Like, it's the music. It doesn't matter what the fuck anybody's doing, but sometimes it's hard to keep your thoughts from wandering for an extended amount of time, right? You're playing a gig, but man, that's, if you can get that down, you know?
Yeah.
Just be able to focus right there on the now, in the moment, for a whole gig. That's an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, and I feel like that's been happening to me, and like, I mean, I played my first, after the 3 days we played the recovery days, and it was a tough gig. Like, a lot of people would have said that was a shit show.
Right.
But I just kind of made the most of it. Now I think a day later we played a more organized gig, like at the Spur, and we had a really unique lineup of blues musicians. This was our blues funk Americana band, and like, I played the gig sober, and because I always like have wine when I drink, and get a little buzzed, to relax me.
Try to get rid of some of that stage fright that always happens.
Yeah, but also it's just like, I'm promoting the bar by drinking,
right?
Which makes me more money,
right?
It's like, hey everyone, go buy a drink,
right?
And everyone's like, okay, listen to that guy because he's got the mic.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. But plus drinking's just fun. Like you kind of want to be on their level on a certain way. If it's a party band, it's like, yeah, let's all throw some shots down, and ideally you want to be professional, not make the music sloppy. But
right.
If you can like have a good time, like if the crowd is drunk, you at least want to kind of be like, you're like, I'm right there with you guys. Like, we're on the same level. Not that I'm going to get as drunk as the crowd, because then I'll die on the way home.
Yep.
But, yeah, so...
It's cool, man.
Train of thought, but...
Oh, it's all good. So you have all that going on, and then you ended up meeting somebody a little while ago, and you've been getting into cars a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I find fascinating about you, is anytime you put your mind to something, you're all in.
Thank you.
All in.
I've been realizing that
like when you
myself.
Put your mind to the drums, you were all in.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of that book, Outliers. Have you heard of this book?
Mm-hmm.
It talks about, because people are always saying, you hear them say it all the time, that guy's a musical genius.
Mm-hmm.
He's a genius. And it's like, oh, so you think he just like got up one day and could fucking play his instrument like that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, that's not how it works, man. So this whole book talks about, it took the Beatles, it took, I think, Beethoven, and some of these people that we think are prodigies or just gifted. And this guy did all the research, and he calls it the 10,000 hour rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Beatles, what most people don't know, before they ever stepped foot into the United States, they had over 5,000 gigs under their belt.
Mm.
They were playing all the time. They had this fucking bar. They played, I think, 6 or 7 nights a week. I mean, they were fucking solid. Most musicians don't even get that amount of gigs in their whole entire lifetime.
Yeah.
Or whole career as a musician.
Yeah.
And these guys had that before they stepped into the United States.
Mm.
And then Beethoven, people are like, well, he just started writing these big, symphony, concertos, whatever the fuck, when he was really young. He's a genius. It's like, yeah, he wrote that shit at 18. And it was really fucking good. But he's been writing that shit with his dad since he was 8. 10,000 hour rule, man.
Yeah.
And what you did, which is impressive, is you got those 10,000 hours in before you hit your 30s. Some people get that in before they hit their 20s. And that's impressive as hell, man. Like, you look at Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
How old were they when they started dropping records, man, that were huge? Zeppelin? They were in their 20s. The Doors? All these guys were fucking young. It's like they got those hours in. I'm still trying to get those hours in, man.
Yeah.
I haven't got them in yet. I think I'm getting closer.
Yeah. Good.
But that's impressive. But then you and your girlfriend are into cars.
Yeah.
And so just seeing what you've done with that Mustang, it's a Mustang, right?
Yeah.
Just all the posts and all the different modifications and just, you're all in.
Yeah.
So,
Like a lot deeper than I thought I would.
Yeah,
I'm like,
man.
I'm just gonna buy a Mustang. Like it started off with, I want a Mustang because when I was 10, my cousin bought one, and it made a big impression on me as a youth. And I'm like, well, I think I'm gonna have a Mustang one day because that's just dope. Like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you?
sure.
You live once, and let's get a Mustang. And but I was distracted by, music school and college debt. So what I did was I saved up money, I lived very frugally, and I paid off all my college debt in 2 years
Nice.
playing the drums,
Nice.
which is kind of crazy to think about that. And then I saved up another 2 years, so I had cash in hand
Uh-huh.
for the Mustang, and I bought it. And then I'm like, I'm going to do a couple things to it to make it cool. And I did, and all of a sudden it's like, it's full, it's already like it's not, it's a lifelong project. It's going
Right.
to continuously evolve, but all of a sudden it's like fully blown, and like it's just out of control, like customized, and it's like, I guess this is what I do. I take
Yeah.
stuff and run with it, which
Yep.
is, it's cool. And then I meet my girlfriend, and she's a professional auto body and auto painter, and so I'm like, well, I'm gonna study mechanics, and between the two of us we can do anything.
Yeah. That's cool.
And so she's training me how to do auto body and paint, and then together we're working on wood and figuring out how stuff works down there, so that, because I've been ripped off by mechanic shops.
Okay, dude.
And
We got to talk about that real quick because
Yeah.
I want to know what happened there.
Yeah.
Because that, like, I read about that because I follow you on
Uh-huh.
Instagram, and that is some shit. So, like, I've been following you and
Mhm.
Pink Pony Customs,
Uh-huh.
which is your girlfriend's feed,
Yeah.
and she just had a beautiful Mustang. She put so much into that pink,
Mhm.
beautiful Mustang, right? So, Pink Pony Customs is
Mhm.
her feed
Yeah.
handle, right?
Yeah.
And just all the stuff you guys have done to those things, and then you put up a post one day saying that her car's fucked.
Right.
You took it to a
It
mechanic,
was-
and now it's
it was her
just
daily
fucking
driver.
garbage.
So, her daily driver was a custom painted Hyundai Accent 07. So just a, so this wasn't about the Mustang. Her
Oh, it
Mustang
wasn't a
is
Mustang?
fine.
Oh, I thought it was the Mustang, dude.
No,
I was like, Jesus, that is
Oh,
fuck.
man.
Oh, okay. So
If her Mustang got
still sad,
shocked,
but not as sad as I
Yeah.
thought it was. Okay.
yeah, for
okay.
sure.
Shit.
No, yeah.
You just said your car, and I just assumed it was
Yeah,
the Mustang. So I
so-
was like, oh my god.
I mean, we took her daily driver because her Mustang's a race car, and it's a pain in the ass to drive every day because
Right.
you gotta work your way around all the bumps and dips, and it burns 12 miles to the gallon when you're having a good time in it.
Right.
And it's a weekend car.
Uh-huh.
It's a car that you take to shows or you take to the drags, which she does both, and she just enjoys it on the weekends. So
Right.
during the week you need a daily driver. So she had this 07 Hyundai Accent, and that's the car I actually learned. My friend and we learned how to paint on it. She's like, "Hey, come over, I'm painting this car."
Right.
And I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, "Okay, here." She taught us how to fix the dents, how to bondo, how to sand it, how to prep it, how to mask it, and then she painted it, and she had us paint some of it with us. So we learned how to paint.
That's
or
cool.
we got our first training session. Like,
Right.
It's
an art, man.
It's an art. Like
Yeah.
we didn't learn how to do it that week, but that's where we got our start. But So yeah, she customized that dinky little accent, and it became this awesome car. Like when I was in that car driving it, you know, I'd borrow it to, like, on snowy days to get up the mountain to do a gig. I'm like, this car is cool. It's fun. It's like, I mean, it's like 100 horsepower, but it's fun. It's got so much character and personality. Plus, it's sprayed custom Galaxy.
Yeah.
And it turns heads everywhere. Everyone's like, cool paint job. They're like, is that a wrap? And I'm like, no, my girlfriend painted it. And it feels so cool to say that.
Right.
Like, my girlfriend and I painted this car.
Yeah.
Like, just in a garage. And it's like just beautiful custom Galaxy artwork. And it's just awesome. And then, you know, the starter went out on that car. And we're like, well, we can either spend the weekend learning how to fix the starter and swapping it, or we can take it to this shop next to where you work for convenience.
Yeah.
You know, give them $200, they'll fix the starter. Meanwhile, that opens up our weekend to do something else,
right,
something more important,
sure,
or more priority, whatever. So it turns out, you know, this we screwed up, but this shop, it was a chop shop. They were, you know, I think they were peddling heroin, and it was an auto shop as a front. So they took her car, they had it for 3 weeks. It's like, hey, is my car done? Hey, is my car done? Hey, is my car done?
To change a starter?
To change a starter. I mean, they were just throwing bullshit excuses at us.
Oh, God.
And 3 weeks later, the car is hacked. It's damaged. They must have dropped the transmission because it was like, it's a shit show. We ended up pulling the car out. Like, we called a tow truck. They're like, okay, you have 2 hours. We'll be here with the tow truck. Get the car on the ground. Make sure it rolls. We're pulling it. And so we had a tow truck ready. They backed up, and, you know, half those guys are strung out, and one of the guys is, you know, trying to fix things, and he's like, hey, sorry, I am not the one who did this car, so I don't know where things go. He's like putting bolts into places that probably don't make any sense, and we ended up, like, we were ready to pull the car out on its disc brakes, just to get it back.
Right.
Because it'd be gone if we hadn't done that. So they did manage to, like, shittily put it back together. They gave us, like, a box of bolts. Here you go. This is from your car.
So what the fuck were they doing to it? Were they selling parts off of it?
Probably.
Or did they...
I don't know. Like, all they did was, like, we just got the car back damaged. And, like, we took it to a race car shop that we trust, because Firestone didn't want to fix it.
Right.
We took it to Firestone, you know, more corporate chain. They're like, hey, can you look at this and fix it? They're like, oh, no, this is a shit show. We can't. Like, we don't have the expertise or the mechanics to do that. So then we took it to this shop that we trust. They build race cars, and they're really good at what they do. And they put it all back together. The car runs, except it's a vegetable. Like, it won't stay in fifth gear. It's got noises. It's like, they did a great job rebuilding it, but they must have dropped the transmission, like, off the hoist or something, because there's just damage, and we've spent so much money trying to pull it back together. And at some point she's like, well, this is just a money pit, and it's like this $200 job has turned into a multi-$1,000 trying to cover for these people's errors. And so, you know, so now we're, you know, pursuing legally. And
what's gonna happen though? I mean, it looked like they were shut down.
Yeah, they're shut down.
I mean, is there somebody you can actually go after?
Yeah. So we're kind of in the middle of that right now. So we're in the middle of a legal pursuit. So
there's so much shitty people out there, man.
I'm just hoping that we can get money back, because she was, like, not forced, but, like, she's like, well, I can't drive this car. So what we did was we bought the car that she was going to buy in, like, a year or two, which was a $15,000 investment. And so she can't afford, she can barely afford to pay rent right now, because she has another car payment, because we bought the new car, and, you know, I helped her because I had some extra money. I'm like, here, take this, because you don't have it right now. It's a loan. I loaned her some money so that she could have a down payment. And we bought a salvage title Ford Focus ST, just amazing car.
Cool.
So, like, it's a blessing, but I'm not justifying this.
Right,
like,
right.
Fuck that. Like, I'm glad we have the focus. We would have had it anyway within a year or two, but now we just kind of have it, and we can barely afford it. Like, she can't make her rent because she's just so financially in the hole from all this. And that's what kills me. Not to go into like the stress.
That's frustrating as hell,
like
man.
her health is going downhill as a result, and I'm like, that's where it hurts. That's where you're like, nah, dude, you don't fuck with my family. Like, like I will pursue you.
Yeah, there's a lot of
the day I die,
shitty people out there,
until I
man.
get what I think is just for financial, for emotional.
You guys think you have a good chance of getting recompensated?
I can't really comment on that right now.
Okay.
It's just all I can do is try.
Yep. Well, hopefully those guys get some retribution, man. That's bullshit.
Yeah. 2 years ago, the day I bought my Mustang, I took it into a shop. Like the day I fucking bought it, I started getting ripped off.
Sucks. There's a lot. I tell this to people all the time, man. There's a lot of hacks out there. There's a lot of good people, but there's way more hacks. And that goes for everything. Like trying to find a great dentist. Hard. All those guys have a shit ton of debt, trying to pay it off. They'll drill into teeth that are like iffy just to get money.
Yeah.
But there are good, honest dentists, right? There's a lot of shitty mechanics, but there's some good, honest ones that know what the hell they're doing. So, but trying to find one, by trial and error is not the right way to go about it, man.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to end up with a bunch of broken shit and shit that wasn't put together. I got a few places that I trust to take this. Not a lot of people know how to work on these types of things, but I got a few places.
Don't take it to the wrong people, because you'll show up the next day and it won't be there anymore.
Yeah.
You're like, where's my car? All of a sudden they have their doors closed and they're gone.
It's unfortunate.
And that happens. So word to everyone: be careful where you take your cars.
Yep.
Do the research. This is coming from me and my girlfriend, who, and this is embarrassing, we basically work like semi-professionally in the auto field.
Yeah.
And this happened to us.
Yep.
So it's like, if this happened to us and we like have, we're aware of these things, like, it's gonna happen to you.
Yeah, and they take advantage of people who don't know shit about mechanics too. Like my dad's a diesel mechanic. He's been a diesel mechanic since he was like 19, 20 years old. He knows everything, but he was having some issue with his truck. He took it in, so he didn't have the time to troubleshoot and try to find it. And then they told him it was this and this and this, and come to find out they actually unplugged something from his wiring harness to cause another problem.
Oh my gosh.
And then wanted to charge him extra money to like fix it.
Oh man.
And he figured that out, dude. He was so pissed.
Yeah. Did he?
He called him out on it, man.
Yeah.
He went in there and he's like, "Fuck you, give me my money back.
Yeah.
This is what you guys did. It's bullshit."
And what's cool about the modern age of living on the internet is, and then you're gonna call me stupid. Well, why didn't you read the reviews? Because if you go look up the reviews of this place, there's like 21-star reviews, long stories of people explaining that they were basically chop-shopped.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so it's like, well, if we would have just gotten online and read like, hey, let's just take a minute and make sure this place is okay. But we assumed it was okay because we look at the sign and it says Napa certified. This is this shop, and it's Napa certified.
Oh, so they put that up there just to fool people and shit, or what?
I don't know what the connection is, and I'm nothing against Napa, because they just it's not their fault.
Right. Crazy, man. That sucks.
So,
that's a lot of shit to have happen just in a short amount of time.
Yeah,
having that happen to her, and then you having your situation.
Yeah,
but
it's like we have these amazing things, like we have these really cool lives, and like if you see us on Instagram, it's like, wow, these guys are killing it. They're like together, and they're building race cars together and show cars together, and they're doing really amazing work, and they work as artists for their income. It's like, what? These guys are the luckiest people ever. But it's like,
shit happens.
Well, I'm gonna go home and like make phone calls to police stations today,
right,
to try and get justice, and that's.
Well, the thing I like about you guys is that, and some of my favorite Instagram people are the ones who don't just post all the happy, positive shit in their lives, They also post, like, the hard times. And
that's cool.
I need to start doing that because I don't really do that much. But there's, shit happens. But overall, I'm pretty happy with my life, man. But sometimes shit happens, dude, and life throws you a curveball. But it's all about there's a coffee mug at my work that says life's all about how you handle plan B. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you just fucking fold when plan A doesn't work, you're done.
Yeah.
You gotta stick through and hit plan B. So I'm stoked, dude. I'm stoked that you guys are like together. That's really cool to know that you guys have found each other and that you have a good life together.
Definitely.
It's great that you both support each other
in
your hobbies and your passions.
It is pretty amazing and extremely rare.
Yeah.
So I feel very
And that's
blessed.
the key, man. If you support your partner and let them be themselves, let them grow and mature, you will be happier in the relationship because that person will be a better person when they're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So when she allows you to do all your passions and things too, it's
and I allow her
ideal.
to do whatever she wants.
Yep. It's a good situation to be in.
We're
man.
not butthurt over anything.
Mhm.
It's really great.
Good, man.
You know, I guess it's my first adult relationship, if you will.
Yeah.
I think we've gone through trials in our lives, and as you know, we're both in our 30s now, and it's a good place to kind of, start something like this. It's like, I've learned, it just takes time to like discover who you are, and like you don't know who you are when you're 20.
No.
Like
God, no.
if we got together when we were 20, it wouldn't have worked.
Nope.
It probably wouldn't have worked.
You got to go through some shit to appreciate the shit you got.
But now that we both have these particular experiences that have grown us in certain ways, we can get together and be like, oh, hey, this works very well right now.
Yeah.
We're going to take it and ideally, take it and just do cool things in our lives. And
Hell yeah,
enjoy
man.
each other and do art, live.
Yep.
Live.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last thing.
Yeah.
You're in 2 bands right now.
Yeah.
Which, just give us some info on them, and
Yeah.
then and let the listeners know where they can find and listen and follow and catch you guys.
We've got 2. I call them bread and butter gigs. They're cover bands. That's how I make all my money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One of them is called Rage Against the Supremes, and we play top 40 kind of stuff. You can usually catch us at bars and clubs. We usually work the Park City circuit. We also do weddings. That's where the weddings and corporate events and stuff like that.
Right.
Just because that helps.
But you guys are having a good time doing it too, though, right?
Yeah, if it's a good wedding, like people get rowdy, it's awesome for sure. I'm not saying weddings are not fun, but weddings are great because you make good money and it's just a good time.
Hell yeah.
And then so we're actually playing. Is it Friday today?
Today's Friday.
Today's Friday, so we're playing tonight at the Spur.
Cool,
10
man.
to 1.
That's
should
a
be a
great
good
place.
time.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Our singer actually lives in Colorado now, and I'm like, well, I guess this band is done, but no. He's been in Colorado for the last 6 months, maybe a year, and we still he flies in, or we book gigs in Colorado, and we still make it work.
No shit.
We show up, and we play the songs, we kill it, and it's fun. We make money.
Nice.
The band still exists. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
He must love it.
Yeah.
That's a commitment.
I think, after 8 years of playing together, like you get a certain chemistry that.
Yeah. You realize you're not going to find that someplace else.
It's going to be tough to regrow that from the bottom. If he starts a band in Colorado, which you mentioned he has, and he's like, dude, I miss you guys.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's cool.
Like you guys have to put in the work to catch up to this level of what you had.
Yep.
But the other band is Los Hellcaminos, and we play. It's a little bit more musicians' music rather than party music, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's Americana, blues, funk, a little bit more rootsy, a little bit more old school. And that's a really fun band to play. And people still party and dance to that band, especially in Park City.
Sure.
People like to party in Park City. But yeah, that's a really fun band for me to play in because it's just very artistic and expressive, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas the top 40, you get a little bit more locked in to just the song arrangements and stuff. But yeah, if you look at the Spur schedule, I think that's our main gig. We're there a few times a month between both bands. And it's a wonderful place. They treat us really good, and the clients kind of know us by name at this point. They're like, "Who's playing tonight?" And somebody will ask me, and I'm like, "Oh, Rage Against the Supremes," and they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Huh, And I got to get on Google and be like, how to handle fame. Just kidding. So.
Well, cool, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and
thanks for having me.
Fitting this into your
fun.
schedule. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yep, gonna do a lot more of these, and we'll have you back on in the future too.
Great.
If you're
I'll
down.
have to get subscribed and I did listen to one that you sent me, but I'll have to listen to some more.
Hell yeah, man. Want to take us out with a funky beat, man?
Sure.
Can you feel it?
Yeah.
All right.
How many minutes? Give me a minute.
Let's do 3 to 4 minutes. How's that sound?
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode of The Swinging Lights, then please take a moment and head on over to iTunes and show us some love. You can do that by giving us a review. and maybe leaving some stars, preferably 5. If you don't like the podcast, don't be a dummy. Unsubscribe. It's that easy. Speaking of subscribing, go over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Most of these interviews and musicians performing are on video in the Volkswagen bus. You can go over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and watch all them videos. We also have a website, theswinginglights.com. You can listen to the Swinging Lights music there. You can see when we're going to be performing next. But there's a new tab now entitled Podcast. If you click on Podcast, it'll take you to a page that'll have a list of all the episodes we have done so far, and where you can download the episode to listen, but also where you can find all these artists and their music and what they're up to. Follow them on Instagram. All the links are there. So that's all now up on the website. And, I guess what else is there to say other than have a good day, man. Chill out, relax. Don't get so worked up.
Slow, go young again.